everybody. Welcome to Sonic Talk, episode 617. Recording today, live on Wednesday, the 29th of April. Sorry, I'm just concentrating because I'm doing things slightly differently this week. Usually we have a load of preamble. And I thought if I just hit go when the show starts, then I don't have to edit it and put it back up again. That comes from having just done 40-odd videos with the Superbooth Home Edition that we've just done. I'm just sort of trying to streamline my workflow. But anyway, that's probably not what you tuned in for. You tuned in for jolly japes and banter around the world of music technology and synthesizers and music production and all of those things that surround the making of tunes and such like. So let's say hello to everybody. First of all, actually, let's just say thank you to our friends over at iZotope who are going to be giving away a copy of Ozone 9, which is a brilliant mastering system. This is advanced, actually, so stay tuned for that. There'll be a competition about halfway through the show. We'll also announce the winner of last week's. But let's go to our visitors and our not clients, what am I talking about? Our friends in the outside world who are in their own isolation area. There's Mr. Dominic Hawken there. I think your chair's dropped a bit, Dom. You've kind of dropped down in your shot a bit. Yeah, you have to, or you're slouching. Maybe you're that's better.
I was slouching, actually.
And to take your fingers out, your hands out your pockets.
There you go. Take your fingers out my pocket. Sorry, there you go.
Dominic Hawken there, a studio where he's does a lot of music production. Actually, the lights are on, so I'm guessing you've rewired it, and it's all happening again.
Yeah, there's a bit more rewiring that's been done, and I've been playing around with some modular stuff. I think last time I was here, I was just putting it together, so put all the modular stuff back together. Everything's kind of working again, which is nice. And I've been doing some remixes for some friends in the meantime, which is nice, keeping my hand in. But I was saying to you earlier, a bit of homeschooling going on at the moment. So it's kind of taking out big chunks of the day. So late nights in the studio and getting up early and then pretending to be a teacher. Big up all the teachers because they're doing an amazing job, having tried to do it for the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, no, fair play. Well, my daughter's a bit older than that, so it doesn't have to. So all I have to do is provide her with internet, phone credit, and technology. So that's that. I suppose that's which has its own challenges as well. But yeah, fair enough. Dominic, of course, also making Snuggle Sounds, which is a sleep help app, which might actually be very apt at the moment.
It's an apt app, yeah. So if you're having trouble sleeping, look up Snuggle Sounds on the App Store. Snuggle Sounds. It's really cool, actually, although I do say so myself. And the sales are up since everyone's been locked away. So even though we're all at home, I think a lot of people are having a few problems sleeping or chilling out. So worth a look. And obviously it supports me, which is a very epic cause as well.
Of course it is. But thank you very much for that. And plugs are absolutely fine in this particular scenario. It's absolutely okay. And we also have Mr. Yoad Nevo there, who's got a very minimalist set today. We're not seeing his Neve or Nevo sounds, and we're not seeing the discs behind us. This is a totally new venue, or at least a new wall. How are you, Yoad?
Yeah, I'm very well. Actually, like Dominic said, quite busy because I'm doing homeschooling with my daughter, which is challenging but fun as well. She reminds me a lot of myself in the way that she's basically very rebellious. And anything that doesn't come to her like in an instant, she gets upset and she doesn't want to do it. So it's quite challenging to, and I can totally identify with her on that. So yeah, it's challenging, and so doing that as well as my work for Waves, which is full on, and a lot of mixing. So yeah, it's although I'm not physically in the room with people and making music together in the same room or mixing or whatever, it's actually quite full on. Yeah, but it's fun. It's interesting, yeah.
I can imagine. Of course, Yoad does a lot of mixing, a lot of remote mixing, I'd imagine. We've seen him in his studio before, and if you haven't seen, we've done a studio tour, and we did that great video with Yoad on algorithmic reverbs, and I think we've got another one in the cam which we'll be showing again soon. So that went down very well. Thanks for that, Yoad. And we also have Mr. Dave Spiers, GeForce Software, who's there in splendid isolation. X, is that some kind of Apple OS X thing? What's the X stand for? Or is it just X?
It's a target.
ex-employee, ex.
Yeah. No, I think it's a really old manky Apple. I think probably when they brought out OS 10, they kind of dished these out to developers.
Yeah,
And this
Panther or
one,
something. I remember.
Yeah.
I got it as extra large, and gradually I've grown into it, I suppose. But yeah, hands up who needs a haircut. Look at the state of that.
Yes. Dominic, I'm not sure you do, and I'm pretty sure I'm okay. Yoad looks fairly well trimmed as well.
You should have seen me a couple of weeks ago when I did it, because I tried to do it myself, and then I had the wrong, the wrong length, and basically I had to shave it. Start again. Restart for the haircut. So.
Oh wow! Well, that's I haven't had. I haven't had much time. But for those of you perhaps been watching Sonic and maybe keeping up with things, and that's why we haven't had any reviews out or any other video content other than the Superbooth stuff. Superbooth is now done. We posted the very last video today, which is the Roland Fantom video. With Ed Diaz, which incidentally was using again this Roland video mixer technology, which I have to say is pretty fine. I'll just show you just quickly. I think I've got this Roland Academy. I'll just post this up, which funnily enough is a sort of topic anyway. So I'll just play a little bit.
And just find the ones that I tend to lean.
So this is all going.
And the main V piano that I lean towards is
have a look. Where is it?
East Coast studio piano. I just love the sound. Let's see.
Man, it's really fancy.
Pull it off. So,
So yeah, that was. Oh, actually, I'm not. That doesn't stop it, does it? So yes, we've done a lot. I think we managed 40 videos. I think there was only one casualty, and that was Matt Hodson's live stream. We had some real technical problems, and so we are, people who can't find that, have another look around, because I've re-uploaded it with local recordings of his stuff, and it's way better. Obviously, full stereo. We did scanner, we did in body. Thanks to those for being game, and it all kind of worked. More or less, apart from it turns out that we can't stream in via this cool technology in stereo, which we used to be able to. I'll just give you a fact on that, and the fact is that auto echo compensation, which is common amongst something called WebRTC, which is what is used to transport this video around the place, sums everything to mono. So without auto echo cancellation, which is designed for not having headphones in and whatnot, everything is mono. So I'm lobbying the makers of this software to disable that, or at least make it a switch so we can get stereo in. But that's beside the point. But Superbooth was indeed a lot of fun. A lot of modular makers, a lot of the big guys didn't really release their new stuff, and we think this is partly because the way that obviously they're doing smaller production runs, perhaps have got their stuff, so they haven't got to deal with much bigger operations, which have been much more affected by the world situation. So, hence we had a lot of that stuff. But we did get a ton of videos, and I hope you enjoyed that as well. So, I mean, one of the things, the first topic really was the Roland Cloud Academy, which is, again, this is their new directive. And now, they've realised that they can't really get to in-stores. This is sort of accelerating this kind of notion of video conferencing and doing things remotely. So the Roland Cloud Academy have added the MC series and the Fantom series, where you could sign up and get like a 15-to-1 kind of tutor ratio, where you have a real-time lesson and exploring the higher features of their stuff, which I'm sure lots of other people. It's just an interesting idea. I think Dominic, you were sort of saying, and Yoad as well, but this sort of acceleration of this kind of notion of remote working and everything being done, via video conferencing and whatnot. It's happening, isn't it? And it's happening right now.
It is. Yeah, and I mean, it was happening. It's just kind of been sped up a lot, hasn't it? And I think just looking at some of the YouTubers out there who are doing demo come educational style music videos, I mean, it's very obvious there's a huge range of abilities and understanding out there. Even just doing I started doing a few ages ago on the Deluge, and I just went right back to basics. I said, this is a sample, basically, right from before you even understand what MIDI is. And I was amazed at the number of people who were like, actually, I really understand it now. And that idea of being able to get not just a one-to-many kind of YouTube style thing, to get someone speaking to, whether it be 15 or 50 or whatever. Obviously, work-wise, people are using Zoom a lot these days, and I've heard of people having sort of 50-seat meetings. as long as everyone mutes their mics, okay, it works really well. And of course, it's way more cost effective for the company to be able to do that, and actually a lot more personal as well. I mean, I've often wondered about trade shows, whether they're for the trade shows as in like large Superbooth style events that involve the public as well, rather than just trade to trade. But there does seem to be more trade that gets done rather than service to the people, and I think that kind of direct approach works really nicely. I think in general, there's still nothing beats a face-to-face ultimately. But it's, learning is a perfect example. When you're learning some software-based stuff or whatever, it makes a complete difference. I think in terms of, we've seen the change in terms of just sales of the equipment. People are buying things off of YouTube, kind of recommendations and demos. And listening, the big leap was being able to judge sonic quality on YouTube, I think, because it was terrible in the early days. You think, well, I wouldn't buy that off of YouTube because it doesn't sound like it does in real life. Now it sounds like that. Now the tech is, albeit the tech we're using now won't broadcast in stereo, but that aside, as soon as you can hear things and people understand the nature of chat and the nature of online conferencing and the nature of the fact that you don't all speak at once and you just sit back and listen and keep your questions to the point. I think it's a brilliant idea, and big up Roland for doing it. They've really transformed themselves in the last few years into a very leading company, from a company that's always been a massive force, but perhaps was slipping a little bit in what the public was wanting.
Yeah, no, that's a very fair point. I think that it's interesting that this happened quite quickly, but now, and they also happen to make some of the best video mixers. In fact, we got hold of one for Gaz to do some stuff because he's doing videos, because we can't really have people in here doing product presentation or reviews coming in because obviously nobody can move around. Yoad, you were saying the same sort of thing, really. I mean, the trade show thing is, I must admit, I feel like I've done a trade show. It was as exhausting, but I haven't got the buzz from it because I didn't have the energy. That's what's missing, the energy in the meeting of the people. Yes, I mean, you get all of these things that happen. You come back feeling like, yeah, great, what a vibrant sort of industry. Whereas when it's done through a lens, it's a very different experience, I think. Oops. Wrong button. There we are. Sorry, I did beg your pardon.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you are very experienced in doing stuff on your own, but I always find myself that when I'm just sitting in a studio in front of a mic on my own, I feel a little bit silly, and it doesn't have the kind of vitality as doing something live. Even the live, I just mentioned it before, the live webinars that I did, even just the fact that there are people watching, like now, in real time, gives it a sense of kind of urgency and commitment. And when I do videos on my own, it's a little bit, I need to work on myself because I enjoy doing it and I enjoy kind of relaying the information. But yeah, it's different. But those trade shows, though, and the big conventions and all that, I find it overwhelming. And, just NAMM and all those, it's like, so maybe there could be something in between. But yeah, but I don't think that things are going to go back to exactly how they were before in any aspect of life. But especially on those big events, because people, and also I see it on my work with Waves. We've been working from home for the second month now, and there's really good productivity, and it's more to the point, and everyone is really focused, and we get a lot done. And there's something missing, like the water cooler talks and the complaining about in the corridors and all that. That's kind of, we miss that, but we all do. We just had a product sync meeting yesterday, and we all said that we kind of miss that. But otherwise, yeah, you get things done, and I don't know how it's going to affect, like, the industry, our industry, which is the one I'm familiar with, not to mention other industries. But yeah, interesting times, definitely.
I would agree with that. I mean, I think that things obviously will change enormously, but. The other thing that's really interesting, because I've been doing this, really intensive kind of multi-camera, difficult to set up tech things with 40 people. That's what I've done, and sound checked all of them and then videoed all of them. And I found a group of friends all got together and did a quiz for using Zoom, and I got unreasonably apoplectic at their unprofessional the way that they were conducting themselves in a Zoom meeting, and it was totally unreasonable because that's not the world they inhabit. But it's really interesting the way that, and in the end, I just this guy was just holding his bloody phone on the mic, and it was just going all the time. I said, "Look, can you stop that?" And I just thought, this is really not that. I should just not be part of this because I can't. I'm still working effectively in it. But some people find that very hard. Like my partner, she would talk to me to say to the group, even though she's just here, and you could hear everything she was saying. It's just some people just don't like that sort of thing. I know, Dave. I mean, I imagine many of you haven't had the chance to see the Superbooth videos, but there's. If anyone's seen any of them, there is a different vibe to them, obviously, because there's no urgency at the time. You don't get. Look, I've only got 2 minutes. Or look, if you can't get the set up, I'll come back in 20 minutes when you got your audio set up, and then it's like, okay, my next appointment is coming. It's hard to make it, the brevity, but at the same time, you get a lot more detail.
Yeah. It's odd. I do find the whole thing. It's funny you saying about the quiz. My daughter's like every Sunday night she's doing a quiz, and we're all logging in via Zoom. And actually, Louise, my missus, she doesn't do any kind of social media or anything like that. So for her, it's been an interesting thing. And I was trying to explain that you kind of got to let the person finish saying what they're saying before you interject, because otherwise, they can't hear that you've interjected, and then the whole thing becomes confusing. So the first couple of weeks were quite entertaining. I was like, shush, 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 shush. But I found myself getting a bit uptight about the whole thing. It's like, just don't say anything. When you don't need to say anything, don't say anything. But yeah, weird. I mean, I did over 20 years of trade shows. Really enjoyed Superbooth last year, but I got to the point with NAMM where it was just like, and I suffer from tinnitus, and it phases me, and I always use the excuse to go outside for a cigarette as kind of my headspace time. But in a lot of cases, it was just to get away from this kind of barrage of noise. In fact, I spoke to somebody recently, and he said that he and I had an interaction in the past. And he intimated that it hadn't gone particularly well. And my first thought was, maybe it was at a trade show where, I was completely phased, and I'd probably ignored him. And actually, it was nothing to do with that at all. He felt like he'd been a bit of a dick in emailing me about something. But yeah, it's funny. I miss, well, like I said last year after Superbooth, I miss the interaction with people. But I prefer sitting in a room with people than... Dude, People talk about social anxiety, mate. I get social media anxiety. I'll type something out and I'm ready to hit post, and then I'm like, do I really need to do this? And then it's like delete, and I won't post loads of things. In fact, or I'll do it on my Facebook, but I'll do it just for me as a log of something that's happened during that day. So yeah, all sorts of things we're going to have to overcome. But like Yoad said, I don't think. But I had a really interesting conversation the other day with somebody very high up in an American media company, and they have 3 floors. Well, they had 3 floors occupied in prime real estate in Manhattan, and he said, "I don't really see the need for that anymore. Why would we go to the expense?" And in fact, he was talking about his favorite restaurant in Manhattan. I think he said the rent was $125,000 a month, and that relied on the owner breaking even relied on all of the seats being filled all of the weekend. And he said, when are you going to want to go into a crowded restaurant again? And I'm like, no, I've got no desire right at this moment, but I will sit in a garden pub, social distancing from people. So yeah. I mean, anything that kind of circumnavigates that.
It's a really interesting concept, actually, because we think about it. If the way we communicate on the telephone, we've learned. Some people who there are still people who don't like talking on the telephone because you don't get all the visual cues and things. but you learn how to communicate with people on a telephone, and you wait for things to stop, although it's a bit more real time. So maybe this kind of new method of the multiplayer video conferencing conversation will affect the way that we communicate and affect the way that we listen to other people, because we have to, because of technology. I wonder if at a sort of a basic human level, it's going to actually change the way we interact, because we'll all be doing this, and then perhaps when we get together, there'll be some remnant of that's how you do it when you're in person, or whether that'll all come back. I think that's really just going to have some very interesting social connotations, I think, that we just haven't even considered, which is not very music technology, but I suppose it's technology dictating how we can and how we will future communicate. I think that's going to be fascinating in many ways.
Totally.
Okay, yeah. I hadn't even considered that as a possibility, but I think that's fascinating. Anyway, I'm trying to think. Have I actually got any topics? I think I do. Oh yeah, that was the Roland Cloud Academy stuff. You could search that up. In fact, we did the 2 videos, MC and the Fantom, and the MC wasn't done with the Roland stuff, but. Because they haven't set everybody up. But I mean, you can see they would normally be going to all the stores, and you do a seminar, and you hear it, don't you, all the time. Salespeople go on the road where they do like training sessions on whatever it is, and one they show up and there's only 4 people, and another one they show up and there's too many. So it means they won't have to be on the road, and it's going to change a whole lot of things. But in a good way, hopefully, maybe, I don't know. I mean, it's going to be tough on the stores, but I guess we just have to figure out how to do it. I should, while I'm here, just, if you want to see, I haven't actually set a link up, but there's all of our Superbooth videos. Oh, there's a few poster frames missing. That's a bit of a shame. But did anyone get a chance to see anything that made them think, oh, yeah, I wouldn't mind checking that further out? Or am I going to now embarrass you all by saying, I didn't have time to watch anything. I'm terribly sorry. Because I totally understand. That's fine.
I gave them a brief, a kind of let's go down the list, and almost all of them I kind of dropped in and saw what they were. I was initially surprised at the amount of modular stuff that was on there, and I know that's obviously easier to perhaps produce and react fast to these kind of situations. There wasn't a vast amount of big stuff, if you like. There was some really interesting modular stuff. Didn't see much that kind of blew me away. I suppose Overbridge is a big release in terms of software. There was some software updates, wasn't there? I mean, what having done all the videos, what was the things that you would talk about and you'd go, actually, have you seen this one? Well, here's my top 3 kind of thing.
Oh yeah, thanks for that. You've thrown it back at me. Yeah. It's interesting. I remember very little, which is kind of strange, because I think the thing is I'm so focused on the workflow. I think the new Expert Sleepers Disting Mark 4. I forgot what it's called. It's got a very long name, which is essentially 2 channels of that. But takeaways. Sample playing modules for modular stuff seems to be quite big, because people want repeatability for performance. So Ian Body's piece was like remix, where he was taking stems of stuff that he'd already done and then enhancing it, but clocking it to his system. That was really fascinating. Lots of stereo filters coming out as well, seemed to be. I'm just trying to see what else there was. I did have which one did I get? I can't remember. I don't know which one this is. Let me see.
And we were hoping to debut them.
Mark Verbose, the big takeaway from that was, literally, he said, I might have to go in a minute because my wife is overdue. Or, no, we're having a baby. I said, what do you mean having a baby? He said, actually, she was due 2 days ago. So he shot a video. We did a video with him, and he was literally waiting for the moment. So he gets the award for the most dedication, I think.
Wow.
I'm trying to think what else. Supercritical synthesizers were great. I don't know if anyone saw the piece with George, Electronics. We did this kind of virtual tour. Maybe I'll play a bit of that. So these prototypes, or are these... Sorry, Yoad.
I watched the one, and I'm really sorry for not remembering the kind of integrated modular system with the sampler and the sequencer and all that comes in a case, in a modular case with a power supply. That looked very interesting, and I was kind of wanting to hear how it sounds. Do you remember that one?
Was it AVP or ALM? I can't remember one of those two. Was it a British guy?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember. But
with the game arcade thing. With the game
that's right. Yeah, that was ALM. I think it was this guy.
Yeah, that looked quite interesting, and I like the fact that the sampler, so the integration of the digital and the analog.
With 4 million sounds, what will you create? Take the free trial today.
Let's stop working. Oh man. Everything's gone crazy. Sorry, it's the browser stuff. Yes, that one. Look, that did look good. I mean, that was also the Ircam thing, and the thing. And again, it wasn't so much the equipment; it was the story. The Ircam, because those Ircam, for those of you who don't know, they make a lot of modules. There's a lot of stuff coming out from them, and we're struggling because they're also very efficient, because most modular manufacturers generally the time frames slip and you don't get what you don't get the review. It shows up when it does. Whereas Ircam are really on the case, and they're based in Latvia. And apparently in Latvia, I was talking to Gertz, and it was what I found was very interesting is Latvia was a manufacturing base for the Russian military's technology and specifications. So they had these huge swaves of brilliant engineers, and it's almost like it's this electronic engineering and manufacturing is sort of built in at an infrastructure level. So he says now it's so easy for them to make stuff because they've got brilliant engineers, they've got the choice of multiple fabrication factories, they've got so they just go, oh yeah, well that one can make that one, these can do the metalwork, and he's saying he was actually being a bit of a sort of trade emissary for Latvia, saying actually people are starting to come and manufacture here because it's a simpler thing to do than China, because China is notoriously difficult because of the cultural differences and just the distance involved and the kind of. So that I found that really interesting, but that wasn't really so much about the gear. It was more about just the backstory, which I was trying to get out of these, because most of these things I don't know what I'm seeing until it's in front of me, and in some cases I'm not seeing a demo. I'm just being sent a video afterwards of the demo. So it's because of the way we had to put stuff up. So I had to improvise a little bit there, but I thought that was fascinating.
That kind of reminds me of the Polybox. I have a Polybox that someone has made, that I bought from, I think it was from Moscow, and it arrived, and someone did a MIDI mod for it, and they've used like the tiniest wires, and it was all weird, and it's impossible, it was. And they sent it without any padding. So they just sent the case, because it comes with a cover, and they just posted it as is, without any padding. So it got a little bit beaten along the way, and we had to do some soldering and stuff like that. But that was manufactured in the Soviet Union. I don't exactly know where, but that's what I know, that it was manufactured in a kind of military factory facility, and the switches on it. I don't know if you
on the Polyvox,
remember those.
Yeah, weird. It's like rice plastic or something.
Yeah, but it's like, I really love the feel of it, because it's like, it's supposed to kind of go through an atomic blast and still be able to produce the perfect sawtooth wave.
Proper clunky.
So,
well, that's always good to know. I mean, or maybe a pandemic, for instance, it'll survive that even. No, definitely. I know, Dave. I mean, again, sorry. I guess I'm asking someone who. Oops, I missed that.
Obviously, Access virus comes to mind when you talk about pandemic. But
that's true. I'm trying to think what the original question was, but all of that technical jumping around just completely confused me.
Well, the stuff about samplers in modular is interesting. I mean, I think, but if you want to jump to Dave, I don't want to steal Dave's thunder.
Yeah, I mean, I know you're not doing much in terms of modular, but the other thing that came up, and maybe this is something you could comment on, is that I think there was a headline in The Guardian that was just saying basically the global sales of musical instruments and technology has taken a massive hike. Because I guess people have feel they've got time to do that thing that they never had before.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't. I wanted to watch the scanner thing because I love Robin, but I didn't get any time at all. Because after that last podcast, I ended up throwing myself into this mad project, which I'll talk about later.
Well, I was just going to do the link for you there, Dave. But in fact, I think we should probably just do the Ozone business. So let me just have a little message. So this is what we're giving away.
Building on a 17-year legacy in audio mastering, Ozone 9 brings balance to your mix with never-before-seen processing for low-end, real-time instrument separation, and lightning-fast workflows powered by machine learning. Expect lower CPU usage and shorter startup times with Ozone 9 compared to Ozone 8. Experience fluid metering in a fully resizable environment that lets you track the most subtle details of your audio. Use more plugins at once, mix while you master without worrying about slowdowns or dropouts. And immerse yourself in a smooth, modern experience designed to keep you in your creative flow. As you can see, Ozone 9 is the fastest way to get your master off the ground. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to check out our other videos and head to iZotope.com to learn more about mixing and mastering and to download your free trial of Ozone 9.
Indeed you can, and we thoroughly recommend you do. In fact, we have a competition where you can win your very own copy of Ozone 9 Advanced. We're looking for the hashtag Polish the Mix. The Mix, that's not Polish the Mix, that's Polish the Mix, which has one L as well. It's one of those weird English language anomalies. Polish the Mix as one word, and the hashtag Ozone 9 to @Sonicstate and @iZotope Inc. It's a Twitter competition. Just tweet that, but you can tweet any other stuff. Stick a picture in, stick any other phrases, wrap it in a joke, whatever you want to do. So if you do that, we'll be entered for the competition. And we do have a winner from last week's show. Let me just find that. It's called Wojtek, which is a good Polish name as well, or a Polish name, depending on how you want to pronounce it. Wojtek Lapinski at Wojtek L. If only I had Ozone 9, I could really make finer mixes. Well, indeed, you can. I will. So if you get in touch, Wojtek, we will be able to provide you with the coordinates to download your very own copy to keep forever. Yes, Dave, I was going to I did mean I know one of the reasons you came on because obviously we had let me just play this first and then then you can explain. I like the way it ends in a G there, Dave. Almost the G4s. I don't know if that was intentional, but you get to watch that. You get to do the whole video because you were the first guest on the first show, so you get the full promotional.
Thank you.
So we talk.
I haven't heard that enough.
Yeah, I'm just curious. Did that come back at you at stereo?
No.
Okay. Just wanted to double check that. So tell us what's the story behind this? It's obviously 20 years anniversary of GeForce. I didn't really want to do the big celebrations, but so what happened?
Yeah, well, it all started here, and that's why I was just going to talk about it briefly. In that, I think it was 613, where like one of my I couldn't say it at the time, but Jamie Little's like one of my big heroes. I love his stuff. Anyway. And he'd mentioned that he'd done those isolation loops, and I went over afterwards and kind of donated a little bit and downloaded them. And he'd done his vocals chromatically, I think he'd done like a 15 or 20 note range. And Chris and I had been looking for this way, ever since this chaos had kicked off, we've been looking for a way of kind of saying thank you to people who'd supported us over the last 20 years. Because, like, we're as surprised as anybody else that we've lasted this long. And it was just that moment. I was like, that's it. Because the Tron has obviously been our big instrument. We love the history and everything behind it. We're obviously very good friends with the original company who made it in the UK. And the choir thing just seems so apt because obviously COVID-19 completely screws your lungs. It hits that. And this just felt like an act of like solidarity and unity. And I hit Jamie up and kind of going, can I use those vocals if I kind of tweak them a little bit? And he's like, yeah, man, go ahead. And then I just sent out a kind of round robin email to a load of people who I knew had had their work decimated as pro musicians, particularly live work. And I didn't know what to expect in terms of response, but the response was amazing. Matt Berry hit me up with I explained, I need 35 notes starting from a bottom G to a top F. If you can't do the full range, give me what you can and I'll use Ozone. And I used RX. RX saved my ass on so many occasions. And obviously Melodyne to do stuff, and I'd make sure the formants were shifted, and I'll run everything by you before we even talk about releasing anything to make sure you're happy. And Matt hit me with his vocals within an hour, and it just snowballed, which was absolutely brilliant for me and my headspace after this kind of, right, that's it, there's no going out anymore. So that's why I haven't really seen anything, because for the last few weeks I've just been tunnel vision. And these files have been coming in left, right and centre. And what I love about it is they've all been done. It opened a dialogue between me and every contributor. And some circumstances are fine. And other circumstances have been truly tragic. And others have been difficult. So it just felt like this kind of real act of... And in fact, Jamie Little summed it up yesterday when I sent him through the very final version. And he said, there is nothing more powerful than voices united. And I thought that's so apt, because he was kind of at the beginning of it. He was the guy that really gave me the idea, and then to give me that quote at the end was just brilliant. But yeah, it's been a very emotional experience, actually. I have to say, probably the most personally fulfilling since Bright Sparks, where you get that kind of emotional. And what was really fascinating from my aspect was when these files were coming back, and some of them, I think one was done on an iPhone and others were done on kind of mobile rigs. And I'd have to, I would have to do a reasonable amount of work. And Angie Pollock's stuff was really interesting. She's definitely perfect pitch, because when I sling that into Melodyne and just really looked at it, I didn't want to iron the life out of everything, but she's like 4 cents either way from the perfect pitch. And I'm like, whoa. So I got a real handle on that, their situations. Obviously the recording stuff, and building and having this kind of dialogue with some really amazing people. And there were people who kind of said yes, who've been very old lifelong friends, and there were other people who just kind of went, yeah, I'll do this. I'm a huge fan of this guy Nate Williams, who is Jamiroquai's kind of other keyboard player, but he plays drums. He's like one of those really sickening guys who's amazing at everything. I've played his stuff before. He does these EPs where he's just like, it's like Stevie Wonder with a different vocalist. And he gave me a load of stuff, and just, it came in, and we finally got it out yesterday, and the feedback's been quite astonishing, actually. We were just like, have it, as a kind of thank you. So yeah, that's why I haven't unfortunately seen any of the virtual Superbooth videos, or anything else for that matter. In fact, even Easter, my missus is going, are you coming down? Are we going to actually have a conversation?
I forgot about Easter. Yeah, as well. I think we managed to order a chocolate egg for somebody, but that was about it. Yeah, I think
here's my tech. Look at the state of my tech.
Oh, Dave.
So, on various keyboards, hang on, I've got to find that right. I've got 3 keyboards going into this computer, because on different keyboards, only certain keys work.
Oh, yeah.
So when you're talking about fighting tech...
So you're the Rick Wakeman keyboard warrior. almost.
Yeah, I'm kind of like, the comma disappeared on 2 of them, so I'm like ... and then I have to kind of give an explanatory note when I'm talking to the artist going, excuse no commas, it's just that the commas have stopped, and the other one I have to reach over to and I forget. Anyway, yeah, talk about fighting technology. But yeah, it was amazing, absolutely amazing, and the variations in people's recordings because of the, you know, whatever they'd got. Like Angie went up to her mum's, who's high risk, so she was shielding, so Angie can't go out, but Angie took her laptop. Obviously, Matt has got a nice studio. Nate was up in North Wales. He had one. I had a guy in America who I've known for a long time who used to work for Bob Moog and Les Paul, who's a really interesting character. And I asked them for their experiences, which we've put some of it in the manual, and how they recorded their bits. And he came back saying that his vocal booth is a confessional that he salvaged from the church down the road when they were getting rid of a load of it. And him and his wife, because at the time it was compulsory to take a confession before you got married, did their confession in that very, what is now his vocal booth. So all of these stories were just like, so it was brilliant. I had a huge attachment to this.
Oh, what a great idea! And I guess is it a big download? What does it work out in terms of size?
I think it's about 550 megs or something. So it's not huge. I think we did about kind of 23 sets, and I remastered. In fact, somebody here remastered some of the Tron stuff. So we kind of did a mix and match. But yeah, amazing! Just a really brilliant experience for me. And also, you know, Angie would hit me up and kind of go, look, you know, for me, everything was dark. And this gave me a purpose and, you know, thank you kind of thing. So, yeah, from my perspective, it's just like, thank you, everybody who took part. So, well, yeah, I think we did something special, man.
Yeah, no, excellent. I think it's good to have a project as well, isn't it? And I think that really helps, particularly if it feels worthy. And it's nice when you get things that just sort of all seem to tie up. As you know, I mean, for us it was the Superbooth thing and everything just seemed to work mostly. You know, the fact that I think we got one name tag wrong and poor Matt Hodson's audio tech was it, but the rest of it was, you know, okay, and everybody sort of seemed to get it. Nice.
Brilliant.
Yeah, good. Well, thanks for sharing that. I guess you'll be able to download your copies now, gentlemen, if you need to get hold of your
absolutely
your versions.
I think it's really handy to have because, you know, most choirs, Contact and all those, they're very lush, but they all tend to be very kind of classical and choir-esque, you know. And sometimes you want, actually most of the times for the style of music that I'm involved in, it's ahs and oohs of like a few, you know, just a few voices, and that's what you need and that's what you want. And a lot of times you send the artist into the vocal booth to do that, and it can take you an hour or 2 hours just to do that and then to edit it but what Dave has done here is like just giving it for us producers to use, and it's a very that's a very cool thing. I remember doing something similar to that on a much smaller scale for Sound Better when they first launched. They did like also a freebie thing for Contact on a much smaller scale, but I still use it, and I look forward to trying the new choir on the M-Tron.
Excellent. I think you just got the title there. I think it's going to be either Vocal Booth Confessional or Confessional Vocal Booth.
Big up, Dave. Well done. That's really an amazing thing. Yoad's right. A lot of the patches you get are designed to sound amazing when you touch the keys, right? So there's just bang, what an amazing choir. And trying to fit that into a track can be nigh on impossible. So I've had amazing work.
Somebody said that actually yesterday. There was a lady on my Facebook. She said, you know, every sample library seems to be, I don't want a handle all the time. I want something that just kind of fits as a bed behind it. It's the first time I'd really considered it. But, you know, vocals, man, for me, like the U's and R's, it's just like calming. In fact, all the way through, I kept thinking of that 10cc.
Yeah.
I'm not in love.
Exactly.
But for me,
That's what I was about to say. You can't imagine the 10cc I'm Not in Love song done with a classical choir, because it would just not have the same kind of intimacy and a lot of the Beatles stuff, everything we know and love is all those background backing vocals, not backing vocals, but oohs and ahs are like one guy or two people going in and doing some 3 or 4 overdubs, and that's it. It's not like a massive thing.
Yeah, that's true.
Because so then it can blend within your composition and landscape.
Nice. Okay, so I wanted to get this last one in because I know, Dom, you brought this up, and I still haven't quite figured out what the hell it is. Now, if I can find it... Is that it? Yes. Ircam Flowsynth. Now, as far as I understand, this is an analysing script that takes an audio sample or an audio piece of audio and turns it into parameters that recreate the sound on Yuhi Diva. Is that roughly what we're looking at here? This is very difficult.
That's it.
Okay, so you drop the samples in. It looks like a Max for Live thing. So it will try and synthesize any audio file, and these aren't perhaps the most obvious examples.
No, the first one on there is good. I mean, I had to really... I could be doing a gross disservice here, but I think it's been put together by people who are more programming and less musicians. And it slipped under the radar. It's a project. And a friend of mine picked it up and said, actually, this is kind of like the future. I think this is really, really interesting. But it's quite hard to scratch the surface. I actually had to download all the code from GitHub and have a look at what it actually did. But the fundamental idea behind it, I think, is super clever. And it does actually work to varying degrees of success. So the principle, I think, is more the thing that's of interest here, which is behind the whole thing. They've said modern synthesizers are extremely complex and very hard in your head to imagine a sound and make that synthesizer make that sound. So anything beyond your subtractive synthesis with oscillators and filters and envelopes, it is hard to do that. I can kind of hear something and twist some knobs on a subtractive synth and I can get pretty much what I'm hearing in my head to come out. But as soon as you switch to FM synthesis, anything, working with filters and stuff like that, it's hard. It's really hard. And I'm sure, if it's hard for people who work at it all the time, when faced with a bank of knobs or a black box and a bunch of sliders on screen, it's not intuitive. So they started looking at different ways of editing sounds, and they just happened to pick Diva because in Diva there are models of lots of different synths, so you can combine a Juno filter with a Moog oscillator. So they thought, well, it's a cool synth, you can control it, we'll use one of those. And they started building macros, so you might have a macro that says make it brighter, and that macro would simply open the filter, turn up the resonance or whatever, so they applied sensible names to stuff. But even that wasn't it's helpful, but it's not earth-breaking or earth-shatteringly new. And then they just came up with the idea, well, why can't I just play a sound to it? And let's just use natural learning to see what it comes back with. And we'll train it with a bunch of sounds. And it will effectively try and map the sounds that we play and the library that we play into it to... I think really what's going on behind the scenes is effectively it's trying multiple different parameters, every possible combination till it finds the closest sound, and then narrowing that down and narrowing that down with natural learning. So one of the examples in there, he just goes wow, wow, wow into the mic, and it comes up with a noise coming back, which is, probably Diva's best approximation of doing that, but it's instant. But also when you give it a Diva-ish sound, which is, a Juno filter with a Moogie oscillator, it was remarkably fast, and it did it. So it just struck me as a brand new method, as a very, very early days starting point. It's always the second people through the door that take the ideas and actually turn them into something huge. So I think, unfortunately, these guys may have just opened the door. But if you can imagine it, I don't know, if you've got a synth sound, as we often do, and you go, do you know what? I just wish that just had a little bit of a slightly different click on the front. If it's on an FM synth, that's hard. That's really hard. Or you could play a sound that you've got and say, make it more like this. Don't copy this sound, but take the sound I've programmed in Diva or whatever and move it in this direction. That's a really intriguing way of actually evolving your sounds. So when we've always been talking about artificial intelligence and the way it's affecting audio and music and pro synths and stuff, I think this is something that potentially has been overlooked. But I'm actually seeing working with this code that the guys put together, albeit in quite a geeky way so far.
It's interesting, isn't it? It's sort of like analog resynthesis almost, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost, yeah. It's interesting. I mean, Yoad, I know you've got like a lot of your background in this sort of digital technology.
I just wanted to mention the synclavier that came out in the 80s, and it was using its additive synthesis engine. You were able, obviously it was an offline process and it was very, very tedious. You looked at the waveform and you kind of marked a point of interest thing on the screen that you would see in the waveform, and then it will generate a frame, basically a wavetable image using additive synthesis, and then it will run those in sequence. So you could basically recreate speech and a lot of animated sounds. Subtractive synthesis wouldn't be my engine of choice for something like that because it's somewhat limited. I think that additive synthesis, especially with today's capabilities, is the way to do something like that. And with that, because we hear a lot of additive synthesis in all the speech synthesizers, and they can sound quite convincing, some of them. And that's how they're made, most of them. So with that, that could be, and actually additive synthesis is something that can run in real time, more or less. So you would be able to basically sync to the mic or sync to the synth engine, and it will basically replicate. The thing is that those things tend to sound quite like vocoders, because vocoder is the difference between additive synthesis and vocoder is kind of blurred, and there's a lot of correlation between the two. But I would choose additive synthesis, especially with today's capabilities and technology, to do something like that. I've not heard this particular engine, but it sounds quite interesting just to be able to create kind of analogy synth sounds out of anything. I can't imagine if you play like an acoustic guitar strum that it will do anything, or sound even anything close to it. But it would have to be something monophonic. Like, I can imagine if you do wow, wow, wow.
You've got the filter.
Try to say something and have it make, because you need formant filters and you need vowel filters in order to to be able to replicate something which is quite complex as a voice, as a speech. But
you got to have the ammunition in there.
Yeah, I suppose so. It's an interesting. So it's like it's kind of like machine learning analog resynthesis. I don't know. It's hard to. Dom, you obviously saw something in there that's kind of. I haven't quite twigged yet. Dave, you're looking a bit puzzled as well. The principle.
To me, it's just the principle. The fact that I can say, rather than twiddle some knobs, yes, you shouldn't. Don't get caught up on the fact that it's Diva. This is just a guy and his mate proving the concept that they could play an analog synth sound and it can approximate it. And so they've just gone off and proved it. This is not a product or anything. It's an open source thing that hopefully other people will pick up. But the idea that I could play something to my synth and get it to change the sound and move it in that direction, or get it to replicate my voice or whatever, is a useful front-endy thing for me over and above having knobs on it, you know.
I see what you're saying. Yeah. It's interesting, Dave, isn't it, that that's also Ircam as well, which, I mean, I don't know if you remember. Ircam, for those, you know, Ircam probably in the 70s and 80s was the sort of focal point for a lot of brand new ways of processing audio and synthesis. It was based at the Georges Pompidou Sound. I don't think it still is in Paris, or whether it is or not. But I remember I remember going to Paris and because I was into synths, and Ircam was this almost like a kind of pilgrimage. You know, it's like a holy grail place. Have you ever been? Did you ever have you ever had any dealings with Ircam? Because you use software stuff. So I mean, it's conceivable.
No. I got an invite once, but I couldn't do it. But yeah, I'm trying to think. There was something back in the early 2000s they did. I got a feeling it was distributed. Was it GRM tools or something they did? Anyway, it was
GRM tools. Yeah, that was an amazing processor. Yeah. It was a complex COM filter with those two. Yeah, I loved that. That was really good. Yeah. That was one of the first BST plugins, I think.
Right. Yes, I think you're right.
Awesome. Was really awesome, and that was all done there. I know people who've worked there on secondment and stuff like that. But yeah, as soon as I see the name Ircam, you're kind of like, oh, this is going to be really interesting. Sometimes it's a bit out there, but no, I find this quite intriguing. I'm often asked I like this idea of trying to marry the bridge between, you know, I'm quite obsessed by the kind of creative types and the engineering types. I had a job once in Italy where they asked me to try because actually the two halves of the big company were separated by a big long corridor, and they said, we want you to try and kind of marry the two. So I talked to the kind of engineers a lot and talked to the creative guys, and I just came to the conclusion that the only way, in fact, I got called into the boss's office and he said, so what do we do? And I said, well, there's one solution. It's basically cocaine and hookers. That's the only way you're going to unite these two factions. So that went down well. But no, I love this because I'm also asked by one particular artist in particular who to do sounds for him. And when I present those sounds, he will say to me, yeah, a bit more orange. And I'll be like, oh, okay. So, but really, I'm just kind of floundering. And what about this? And what about this? My favourite one was saw. It needs a bit more saw. So I was like, what is that? SAW, SORE, SOAR? You know, so you're kind of grappling in the dark. But if he had something like this as a reference, it's like, I want a kind of a hybrid of this, and this, and this. Can you make me something that sounds lush from these sources? That might work.
Here's a fun fact for I think in the chat room. See if I can actually get that back. It's gone now, but apparently the Delay Lama, which is one of the first, another fantastic, which was just an animation of a formant filter and a delay of a Buddhist monk kind of throat singing, basically. That was apparently based on Ircam code as well, which is so that, you know, you can imagine the combined the state resources that France have put into Ircam, you know, and that's like the pinnacle of. The delay. I'm sure they've done a load more stuff, but I mean, and interesting when they go to those kind of the funding meetings at high level, at cabinet level, and they're going to go, okay, well, what have we got from Ircam this year, this last quarter, or this last 12 months? And somebody goes, Delay Lama. Here, check this out. You know, just imagine
delay. It was such a cool little thing, that wasn't it? Because it was just an Axis thing with a formant filter. It was utterly brilliant. I know loads and loads of dance artists at the time who were just like slinging that in loads of places in the track, sometimes really right in the background, but when they soloed that particular track, it was like Delay Lama, isn't it? And they'd like, yeah. And then sometimes it would be in the foreground. There was something really magical about that.
Oh, here we go. I just, people who perhaps don't know this, I found it. I'm just going to see if I can get this. That was it, basically. It does sound a bit like a 303, doesn't it?
Hey, I just had a thought.
Yeah.
Maybe, you know, like they do emulations of old computer games,
arcade games,
on your phone and on your computer. You know, maybe someone should revive all those old VSTs like those and the GRM tools. The GRM tools were amazing, and also the first, I don't remember what it was called, that green synth that you used to have on
Code
Mac.
Blow.
I don't think it was even a plugin. I think it was a standalone.
Code Blow 9000. That changed everything for me. I walked past the DigiBooth at NAMM, cool. And it was the Code Blow 9000, that lime green, and I heard it, and I was like, "This is the future."
Yeah.
It sounded amazing.
Let's see if we can find it. Code Blow 9 soft synth demonstration. Let's have a look. This is from somebody called this is Gearwire. So let's have a look. This is what it is. There's Gearwire Gear News as well. Wow. Vibra 3000. That's not it, is it?
Well, that was the cut down version.
Oh, there it is. God, what terrible. You can tell it's from a long time ago because that is the video quality we're getting via YouTube of the screenshot. Unless I've just got poor bandwidth. It's entirely possible.
I want to know who did that originally. I think that was like somebody like Bomb Factory or somebody like that. But yeah, it sounded, the 9000 was so aggressive and yet could sound really sweet. I'm so glad you mentioned that, Yoad. I had a conversation about that with somebody the other day and they were like, what?
I'm seeing if I can find an actual a synth demo. No, you know that there's nothing. Look, we've got Lin 9000, VP 9000, but there's no Coblo 9000. How interesting.
I think it was Artas specific, wasn't it?
Probably, yeah.
I can't remember. Don't quote me on that, but it did sound. I honestly, for me, that was like an epiphany.
Interesting. It's funny, isn't it, when you think about these things, you know, how various. Because for me, I'm trying to think whether the first synth that I really, the VST synth, I think I didn't really get into them because I was more hardware. I think it was probably the Logic instruments that I first got into, just because they were there and part of the environment I was actually spending a lot of time working in. So it's interesting how that. But I don't, and actually, I think we've gone back to this, haven't we? Because I think when you go back to those really early Logic synths, ES1 and whatnot, they actually still sound really quite good. They've got meaty, weighty waveforms.
The ES2 is an amazing synth, and even the ES1, they're really, really good. And I sometimes use the ES1 is so solid. It's almost like a digital SH101.
Yeah. Exactly, well, SH1 or SH2 or something like that with just that massive Roland square wave. It's beefy. Yeah, interesting. So, I mean, yeah, you're probably right. Maybe somebody should do a kind of an arcade pack for old. Well, I suppose that's Logic's. Are they still in Logic? I think they are, aren't they?
Yeah,
they are still in Logic. Wow. Okay. Well, we got to the end of the hour, and thank you very much, everybody. I think we'll probably knock it on the head there. If there are any topics left over, we might need them next week because, as we know, news is a little thin on the ground. But maybe what's going to happen, because I know that there were some releases scheduled for Superbooth from the big manufacturers that maybe have been delayed, so maybe we'll see them in the coming weeks and months. I can't possibly say anything, but I'm certainly hoping so. So yeah, we'll see. But thank you so much, Dominic, for joining us, and I hope you find inspiration for your next lesson. What are you teaching in your homeschooling?
I'm doing maths and French, and thankfully not geography, because I'm all right at maths with a sort of coding brain, but geography, I'm clueless, absolutely clueless. And a bit of music. We had a bit of music today, so recorder. Yeah, it's broadly called music, but it can be a little grey.
It can be a little grating. I think we've talked about recorders before on this show. It's a love-hate kind of thing, I would say. Yeah, I don't know, Dave. You look like you'd forgotten to say something there, but I'm not sure whether that was true or you were just thinking about recorders.
I was thinking about recorders. Yeah, being taught by a teacher who actually went to jail for child abuse not that long ago. Oh. And we were in recorder practice, and he just kept saying to everybody, "Stop playing with me." And we always knew he was a bit of a deviant sort. So yeah.
Bada bing. Anyway, Dave, thank you very much for joining us, and thank you for sharing the GeForce.
Thank you.
The Tron
honestly, it wouldn't have come without being on 613 or whatever it was.
Just to connect.
I'll tell you one very brief thing. one of the people I contacted was Andy Partridge, who uses M-Tron
XTC
in everything he does. And he came back to me and he said, I'd really, really love to do this because I love it and I use it in everything I do, and then sent me a few tracks. But it turns out that a dodgy builder had put an internal door on the external wall of his studio, which is swollen up and he can't get into his studio. But he's promised me we'll do something in future. I thought, how tragic is that? That like you've got an amazing artist who can't get into his studio during lockdown because a dodgy builder's installed the wrong door.
Wow, and then I guess if you break that down to get in, then you won't have a door, so you got to keep it shut. Wow, well, it'll stop the damp and the wind getting in, but wow.
It gives the term lockdown another meaning.
Yeah, lock up. Yes, I suppose it does. But Andy Partridge, I think XTC are genii, or genius even.
I went back and listened to some of their stuff based on my conversations with him, and I love English Settlement and Ball and Chain, particularly that synth, man. And yeah, I was like, the production's just still staggering.
Nonsuch is one of my favourite albums, and I remember because Gus Dudgeon, who did a lot of Elton John stuff, worked with Andy Partridge, and they made something very special. But he's widely quoted as saying he would never ever work with him again. Said it was a nightmare I think that's just just the way it goes. But sometimes that happens. But they made something. The songs on it are just absolutely brilliant. Oh, what's that?
He sent me that.
He
sent me that, and that's Robin Hitchcock and him and Planet England, and he said basically Tron is just like all over it everywhere.
Interesting.
So there you go.
Are you sure he's not in a very roundabout way just getting you to make his voice as a Tron patch so that he can use it himself?
Dude, I'd be completely happy with that. In fact, he said I'll give you a load of vocals, because he's not far, he's in Swindon, isn't he? So he said, when everything's sorted and when we're back to normal, whatever that may be, you can come down and we'll just do loads of vocals and loads of guitars, and you can do that as a pack. And I'm like, oh man, I can't wait. There you go.
Brilliant. And of course, Yoad Nevo, thank you very much for joining us as well. It's been a pleasure, and I hope you get your stuff back, man. It looks like they cleaned you out.
Yeah.
Now I still have access to my studio, fortunately, so no door issues at the moment. So.
Excellent.
Are you sure it's not just a backdrop? I'm pretty convinced you're just like a white screen, green screen. It's just a wallpaper for the synths, right?
And that thing lately, when all the politicians are being interviewed on TV, and it's like compulsory to have a library behind, and they were trying to judge people's intelligence by the amount of books they have. I'm sorry, Yoad. You're never going to make a politician.
Excellent. Well, what a great way to end the show. Thank you very much, everybody. Okay, well, we'll all see. We go to our celebrity squares and we can do our switch off and we can head off into the sunset. Thank you very much, everybody. We'll see you all next time. Bye-bye now.
Yeah.